From the frosty banks of the North Saskatchewan River, right here in scenic Prince Albert, this is your host, Scott Roos, and you have traveled down to the river. And my guest here at the river today is none other than Chris Luedecke, a.k.a. Old Man Luedecke. How are you doing, good sir?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I'm pretty excited because, of course, you know, your album Easy Money dropped just back in June, and I mean, I know the verdict is still out in terms of the sort of change in sound, so to speak. But I know there is a heavy leaning to calypso, and I think there's a reason for that. Am I right?
Well, I mean, I don't know quite what the reason is, but I certainly seem to suit the songs. I really have loved calypso music for a long time, and it felt like I was finally ready to sort of tackle it a little bit on a record.
Yeah.
The record itself is kind of like really like a sort of like a classic folk record. It sort of references, there's like a sea shanty, there's like calypso, there's a bit of like mento, and then of course there's some blues and country, or bluegrass and country kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like, you know, if you don't mind, if we could just, I know there's about 12 tracks on here, but if you just want to go through and maybe just give us, you know, your brief thoughts on each track, that would be awesome.
Sure.
So,
sure. Well, yeah, you might have to remind me, just because I don't have it in front of me, because I'm playing the songs all out of order every night.
Yeah, of course. Well, now,
so Easy Money is the first one.
Yeah. Well, would you ever be an artist that would sort of go back into your earlier catalog and sort of do the whole anniversary record thing where you play it front to back? Are you know?
I might be tempted to do that. I think, yeah, I'm not sure. I guess some of the anniversaries, like for Hinterland, for instance, that's already come and gone.
Yeah,
and for
true.
Proof of Love, that's come and gone. And My Hands Are on Fire, that's come and gone. Those have all been 10 years out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, starting in 2006, I guess, or the anniversaries, you know, 2016, 17, or 2016, 18, and I guess this would be the anniversary year for My Hands Are on Fire, and I haven't done anything about that, so
yeah.
I guess if anybody wanted it, I would be happy to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, given that you've been out and about and there's been, you know, life changes and different circumstances and things and records and albums that have happened over the years, I mean, what's the chief thing that you think you've learned about just writing songs in general?
Well, I think people that have been around and like fans for a while probably know that, like, I just kind of am always writing about where I'm at. And so, you know, it sort of starts out with me kind of, you know, hoping I can sort of follow my dreams. And then now this new record, Easy Money, is kind of like, well, here I am in the middle of it. You know what I mean? I'm still following the dreams, and I kind of still have to. And so like a song like Easy Money is sort of like, you know, wishing that you just get it all for free kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming those are your kids that are kind of on the track in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They say, "Daddy, why do you have to go away?" And I say, "Oh, I got to make the money." You know, I got to make the money. And then there's a cash register sound, and then I think about, you know, that I could stay at home if I didn't have to go, kind of thing. So, but so that's sort of just like farther down the road of parenting. Earlier albums were, you know, like my last record had songs about sort of the toddler and baby days, and now the kids are talking on the record, you know. And so I've just sort of been documenting or expressing different parts of my life as I've gone along and what I've been into. So
well, then I do know you referenced Easy Money, but I mean, I think one, you know, maybe not so hidden secret about yourself and your family is you're a twin parent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you survived.
I got identical twins. Well, so far.
Yeah. Well, now how old are they at this point?
So the twins are 8, and then there's a 6-year-old sister as well. So there's 3 girls in the house.
Okay. Yeah. So the different. I mean, I'm a parent of fraternal twins. I've got
cool.
I've got one of each.
Nice.
I know the struggle of having kind of the 2 babies at the same time.
It's crazy,
the
right?
time goes by so fast.
Yeah, that's right. People are always saying, live in the now, live in the present. But when you've got, you know, sort of 3 kids under the age of 3, you're just kind of trapped in the present for a bunch of years, you know.
Yeah. And then before you know it, all of those things that you were kind of, my God, why have you forsaken me? All of a sudden you're sort
Yeah,
of like, geez, I wish I was still changing diapers. Things were so much
right,
simpler then.
totally. Never get to do that anymore. Yeah, that's right. That's
Well,
it.
I don't know if I
Totally.
would go back to that, but I mean, there's a certain, beautiful simplicity about having toddlers and infants, and,
Yeah,
I definitely miss it.
yeah, for sure.
So Easy Money, right after that, you got Dad Jokes. That's the second track on the record. And I was thinking just the general cadence and there's almost sort of like almost like an aloof kind of feel about the song. And I don't know why,
Hmm.
but it reminded me of like old Schoolhouse Rock songs for some reason.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but
No, like what kind of songs? School like songs from the movie or like?
Schoolhouse Rock, like Conjunction Junction and like all of those. Like it was a
Uh-huh.
thing that happened in the mid to late 70s. They were in between like cartoons instead of being bombarded by the corporate,
Oh, right.
religion of buying. There would be these little kids songs that would come on, and they were
Oh, that's so cool.
American.
No, I don't know that at all. No, I don't know that at all. But that's neat. I mean,
Yeah.
the dad joke song is kind of a series of complaints, really. Like, it's sort of like when I fell for you, my love, and wooed and won your hand, I won the key for us to be in the promised land. But then came renovations, and we had to pick a floor. Ain't hard when all you want is more. It's kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just sort of like it's just sort of a litany of complaint, I guess. Really.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was like a lot of there's a fair amount of piano that sort of weaves its way in and out of songs.
I played the piano on that one.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's the first song I've ever recorded on the piano, and I only played piano on that one song. The rest of it, yeah, is somebody else or an organ and
Yeah.
played by somebody else. Yeah.
Now, the third track on the record you've got is Wake Up Call, and one thing I couldn't help notice is the very distinct Paul Simon influence that you have going in that one.
Well, I just sing in my own voice, and that's not very affected, I mean, and I think that's sort of one of the things
Yeah.
about his singing. His singing that's pretty obvious too is that it's not a real put on voice.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy conversational voice, right?
Yeah, well, and there is one track a little further down the record, and I'm definitely going to mention that because I think the whole Paul Simon thing really comes to the front. But I mean, the next track though is a track called "I Want to Go," which is sort of more of a bluegrass sounding
Yeah, sort of a
track.
bluegrass gospel song,
Yeah, yeah,
or like kind of near gospel because it's not that gospely.
yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like a gospel song.
Yeah, so I mean, I know this is sort of more commonly in your wheelhouse, and you mentioned how you were sort of, making a bit of a traditional folk record with some of the, subject matter and stuff that, comes to the fore at times. But I mean, what are you preaching here, to use that gospel metaphor?
In that song, I mean that song is like I don't know. It's a funny thing. I wrote that song. That song was sort of. There's a song later on that sounds more like Leonard Cohen, but that song was actually written in the after the passing of Leonard Cohen, the week of the American election, which was the same week that Leonard died.
Yeah,
And that verse is the only real clear sort of channeling of a Leonard Cohen type thing. There's a verse in the song about there's the line is but I can't remember what leads up to it. Is it something? Anyway, but basically, there's a sort of a spirit of Leonard Cohen about I from the fire and the longing I drifted away. I bow my head now. I'm back today. I mean, it's basically like a secular gospel song. It's like basically like. I didn't grow up with any of this stuff. I don't feel very much about it, but I don't know what I feel about it. But if there's a heaven, I'd like to go.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, now that's interesting because I mean I know that other reviews and things that I've read have talked about how in this one you're really wearing your influences on your sleeve. But I mean as a songwriter now, I mean obviously you've got a deep respect and admiration for Leonard Cohen. But when it comes to writing lyrics, are there other influences that are gonna make themselves known when it comes to some of the things that you do?
I don't know. I think that's probably the most overt one. I think I've got a pretty solid voice when it comes to expressing what I do. I rarely, that's just a funny moment that sort of slipped in, just because I was so moved by his passing. And of course, everybody was so wound up about the election.
Yeah.
And so there was like a really emotional time. My dad was quite unwell, as we might talk about in a minute, but so it was sort of all bound up together. So that, you know, but in terms of like other people, I mean, I've consumed an awful lot of different people's, you know, sort of lyrical approach and that sort of thing. I mean, but of course, you know, it's hard to say. I don't feel like many of my lines sound much other than me.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Sardine Song comes up fifth, and you know, I couldn't help but wonder now that your kids are, you know, maybe old enough to understand what their dad does, if this is maybe a song that you've kind of written with them sort of around or in the room. Do you have kids sort of running about when you're writing songs sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Sardine Song, yeah, I mean, that's just a bit of, I mean, I just always think it's nice to have a bit of playfulness and silliness and so I'm just always trying to write songs about stuff that hasn't been written about, and I'd never heard a song about that kind of explored sardines.
Yeah.
I felt like they were overlooked, and they're so beautiful in their tins. But I make up a bunch of silly little songs for the kids all the time.
So I know you've talked about Death of Truth a little bit in different interviews that you've done recently. So, I mean, you know, and it's about something very personal, like the death of your father. So, I mean, we'll just move on a little bit and just, you know, talk about Money Pit. I mean, here's another track that you've got a bit of a calypso feel as well.
Totally, yeah. And so Money Pit is a song about the Oak Island gold, which is right about 10 minutes from my house. There's that TV show Curse of Oak Island, but all that takes place kind of like right close to home. So
then the next one is Lonely County. Well, now this is another kind of bluegrass, you know, type song that you got going here.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what do you got going on with Lonely County?
Well, that's got some great twin fiddle parts played by Tim O'Brien, who of course worked for the last 3 records. So this is the 4th record that he's been on.
Yeah.
He produced the last 2 albums and played on one before that, and so here he is again.
Yeah.
And yeah, he did a great job, and it's just a nice sort of romp, I think.
Yeah, well, now what is it about working with him that's made you kind of, you know, go back to that well a bunch of times?
Well, I mean, I think he's not over the top. He's a very tasteful player, and he's tasteful, and he's an amazing singer, and he sings really well. Like, he sings on the track as well. And
yeah,
I've always loved his music. He's not the flashiest of bluegrass players, but he's certainly one of the best. You know what I mean? And I love that about him. He seems to have all the music that I need. Like, he likes good songs, and he sings just so well, and then he plays like hell on 5 instruments or more, you know.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Well, now a lot of bluegrass players tend to, you know, be able to handle themselves in a wide variety of instrumental
that's
settings,
true too,
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I mean, you know, you yourself, I guess you could probably consider yourself a multi-instrumentalist, but I mean, I know the banjo is kind of your first love.
Yeah. I've been kind of distracted by the guitar for a bunch of years, but I'm actually really into the banjo right now.
You know, I mean, I know people would say it's never too late, but I mean, I've always loved the banjo and the sound of the banjo. There's just something about it that gives a whole different tone color and flavor to a song when you add it.
For sure, hey?
Yeah,
I agree.
Now, I was thinking, like, you know, with Domestic Eccentric, you know, one of the big things that came out with that record, of course, that came out in 2015 on True North, I mean, is that you recorded it, you know, in a cabin that you had built yourself. I mean, was there any specific circumstance behind Easy Money that
I started it at the Banff Center, and so I had the song bag was kind of empty, and I went to the Banff Center for a retreat and actually composed Easy Money like in the studio at the Banff Center.
Nice.
And Wake Up Call in the little hut they gave me the night before. And so I went, and within a few days they had given me some recording time, and but it was very early on in my time there, so I was kind of under the gun to come up with something quickly. So yeah, so there is a story, and then the producer of the sessions was Howard Billerman, and he owns the Hotel de Tango in Montreal, and so that's what sort of led me to working with all the players on the album. He produced the players. Mike O'Brien, who plays such wonderful guitar on the record, was at Banff, and so I came back with some recordings of us playing, and a guy named Fats Kaplan too, who's really awesome.
Was that a residency in Banff that you were doing?
It was, yeah, it was a residency, yeah.
So, I mean, now I've never talked to an artist about, what exactly, a residency entails, but I mean, how did a residency in Banff sort of help your whole process?
Well, like I just said, it was a trial by fire. They gave me a recording time, and I wanted to use it, so I had to come up with songs.
Yeah.
And at home it's a fair bit of kids. I just wasn't getting very much done, so it was more like I went there with the intention of getting a lot done, and did.
Yeah.
But then of course I had to do a lot more work once I got home too.
So you need that seclusion in order to do what you do.
Well, it was new to me, but I enjoyed it very much.
I would imagine the the beauty of nature sort of being a backdrop to your writing probably helped inspire to a degree.
For sure. But I mean, I have that at home also, where I've written the rest of the songs,
Good point.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about Paul Simon. I think with How Do I Deserve Your Love, I mean, there is a bit of a calypso feel, but I couldn't help it.
Thing.
Yeah, well, I was going to say too, there's a bit of that Afro beat feel too. And that one made me think of that Graceland era Paul Simon for sure.
Yeah, just went for it. It's led from the banjo, but it's pretty. I love playing that every night. So
yeah. And there's a French language track on here too. I mean, are you a fluent French speaker? I'm talking about Le Ciel est Noir.
No, but that's a song I've loved. Yeah, that's a Dylan song that seemed to go along very nicely with Death of Truth. That's a French translation that Nana Mouskouri sang.
Right.
So again, it's sort of 60s folk thing, but I just thought it belonged. I thought it belonged on the record because it's sort of ominous and prophetic, in a way.
Yeah. Are you a vinyl collector, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a collector, but I have a lot of records.
Because when you do that vinyl dig, a lot of the times, in places like Value Village and stuff, there's inevitably always at least one or two Nana Mouskouri records in there.
For sure, there are. Yeah, it's kind of garden variety, and the one that song is on is there for sure.
Yeah,
sold hundreds of millions of records.
Yeah, I mean, just for it to be so prevalent, I would imagine she would have to.
Yeah, exactly. And then what comes after that?
The Mermaid.
The Mermaid. So that's a sea shanty, obviously, and it seemed to belong. It was just a nice casual moment in the studio.
Yeah.
And then the Skip to Stone one, which is sort of that tale of longing and having to be away from home. And
yeah. Well, no, there's a nice little jazzy feel to that one.
And
you've got I think you've got a bit of a dominant 7 passing chord in there in particular that maybe gives
quite a few of them. I mean, it happens again and again, but it's sort of based around that. So it was, it's a nice. That's a fun song to play every night. It's quite a moving lyric and quite a moving melody as well.
Do you listen to a fair bit of jazz?
No, I mean I did when I was younger, but and I've kind of been getting back into it lately. But no, I don't. I'm sort of, I think part of the song sounding the way they do right now is that I listen to a lot of bluegrass and folk music for 20 years, and then I've just been going back and listening. I think I've been listening to more different music and remembering music that I kind of moved quickly through or when I was younger. So I'm kind of going back. And my dad dying, kind of, I went through and listened to a lot of the piano music that he loved. Kind of went and sought it out and went through his record collection. So I started to re-love the classical music that had been sort of around since I was a kid. And so, it's just sort of, I'm moving back forward from the beginning again with classical music. And so sort of rediscovering a bunch of sounds and music now. It's a good time.
Well, now listen, John Mann passed away yesterday, the singer
Yeah.
of Spirit of the West. I mean, did you ever have any encounters with John?
I'm in Edmonton today. I met him in Edmonton in a shuttle for the folk festival. But I saw him. I saw Spirit of the West my freshman week at McGill University in 1994, and I had Save This House on cassette, which I listened to on Walkman. I was excited to see that show in '94. Especially during Fresh Week, it seemed like kind of
Yeah,
a great thing. You know,
yeah,
but not much experience over the years apart from that. But I ended up moving to the East Coast, and part of it was that Spirit of the West. It was like, that I really enjoyed some of the folk sounds that they had was really kind of a part of what I really enjoyed about the East Coast too.
yeah. Now, Home for Rest, of course, is an iconic Canadian song. I mean, is that your go-to jam with Spirit of the West, or are you,
No, what I really like is I really like Venice Was Sinking.
yeah, yeah,
I think
that's
that's probably my
another,
favorite.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Chris, I mean, I don't want to keep you much longer, but I mean, what do you got going in the near future?
Yeah, I've been touring, but I'm gonna keep. I'm kind of excited to get home and start writing again.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, are you a guy that just, you have to be writing a fair amount just to keep things fresh?
Yeah, hard to say. More like I'm somebody who complains that I never write and does it kind of constantly, but don't really think that it's working out until I get something that I love.
Yeah.
And so it's just sort of a pot that I keep on the boil if I can do it.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate your time, like I said, and I wish you all the best in your travels and endeavors. And Easy Money is a fantastic album, and I'm sure in time there'll be, I mean, I'm sure there already is a fair amount of critical acclaim. So congratulations.
I don't know. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Connor. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for coming down to the river with me today, Chris. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
All right.
Cheers.
Have a good
Bye.
one.